Hello and welcome back to Coast FC, the Canadian soccer podcast focused on all things CPL, Canadian Championship, and more. My name is Felipe and Mike.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And we are back to look over Matchday 24 of the CPL. We are almost at the end, only 4 more weeks in the regular season before we get to everybody's favorite time of the year, the playoffs. At least everyone's favorite that usually makes the playoffs, maybe not for those that usually don't. But it's looking tighter than ever right now, the playoff race, especially after this weekend's results. This is, I think, far and away the most exciting climax to a CPL regular season that we have ever seen in its short history. So no better time than now to get into it. But before we do get into all of the results from this weekend, remember to follow us on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC, as well as finding us on YouTube under the same name. But Mike, it was a weekend where it wasn't too many goals scored. I mean, obviously Forge FC will be happy with the amount that they put forward, but it was a lot of action in the games, in the games where it ended in a draw, as we'll talk about in that one, but an exciting time right now for the Canadian Premier League.
Yeah, some very busy goalkeepers, very busy attackers missing targets. It's a big mixture of things going on, but there is action in both final thirds.
Definitely, and it makes it for a fantastic watch, regardless of who you support. But we're going to start with the first match of the weekend, York Utd against Cavalry. And there was a lot of people at that match and a lot of football journalists that were there. Footy Prime was there, I'm pretty sure, and a couple of others from, I think, wsoccer.ca was there. Like a couple of people were at that game, assumingly supporting York Utd. Unfortunately for them, they got a good match of football, but it was not York that came out the victors because Cavalry won 2-0 in a game where from the first whistle, they kind of set the precedent. Even though they were away from home, they had an intensity from the off. They really threw themselves at York. I don't think York United were quite prepared for that kind of pressure from the off from Cavalry, and they didn't really recover from that. I mean, for the most part, they defended well, but attacking wise, they kind of struggled a little bit. But let's talk about Cavalry first, because Cavalry were really impressive in this one. This was probably one of Cavalry's most solid performances of the season, I would say, especially away from home, where, as I mentioned, they kind of just dominated York for at least the first 30 to 40 minutes. I think York started to get into it a little bit towards the end of the first half, and it was pretty much the same story in the second half too. It was only towards the end of the second half where we saw York United kind of come into themselves a little bit more. But I'd say solidly out of 90 minutes, 60 to 70 minutes was purely Cavalry. It was dominant performances, and then the 2 goals. I mean, one was very, very unlucky for Tobias Wachowski. Elijah almost could not believe the luck that he had. As he fell onto the goal line and blocked 2 goals, but he could do nothing to deny Ali Musi the tap in. Just it was comedic, definitely. The goal. But then the second one just left you in awe. Just first I was like, how did he get that much space? How did he get found in so much space? But never in my wildest imagination did I expect him. You could see on the replay that he was like looking, be like, "There's no one with me."
Scanning everywhere,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
he's like, "There's no one with me. I'm not being put under pressure." He just looked up and saw Vincenzini out and said, "Okay, I'll go for it." And go for it he did. A stunning chip from, I don't know, 35, 40 yards.
I know. And if he'd left it just that second later, Vincenzini's a few more, he's a few steps back. He's timed it to perfection, and like the technique is perfection as well.
Yeah, it was just beautiful. Definitely up there with one of the goals of the season, and really, again, capped off super, super, super professional and impressive victory from Cavalry. Just, you could see that they had a game plan and they executed it from the first whistle. They were locked in. They had that intensity. And as much as York United started to, like, grow into it a little bit towards the end of both halves, Cavalry stayed so strong defensively, something that we know that they are very, very good at being defensively solid. And yeah, just it puts them now ahead of York United in the table. And I don't think Tommy Woolen Jr. could have been happier with that performance.
No, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there of saying, like, it was really professional performance. They managed to dominate it, but still with only 37% possession. Like they were, even when York had the ball, they were comfortable. They were forcing York down, and they've got wide players that can really cause a problem. They've got some quality out there, but the way that Cavalry set up, they're happy for the team. Right, go wide. You try to get the ball into the box. We're dealing with this, and they've seen obviously where York are most dangerous. And they've got themselves in a position where they can make that biggest threat of York's like almost null and void. Like York managed just the one shot on target in this game. They've got their main striker back, but they really struggled, even with all the possession they got, to like really make a big threat on Carducci's goal. I think the one shot on target was an easy one to deal with. I think there was a couple of crosses that came in which weren't dealt with and just went past quite close past the posts, which were probably more of a threat than the actual shot on target. Well, it just shows how comfortable Cavalry were like throughout this game, despite the fact that they're being put under pressure. Like you say, really professional.
Yeah, and I think for them, it comes at a good time. Well, I say it comes at a good time, but at the same time, it might be coming a little bit too late for this kind of form to kick in, because with 4 games left, you look at the gap between themselves and Forge, and they do leapfrog into third, but they are still, I believe, 6 points
6
behind
points, 7
Forge
goals
FC.
behind as well on goal difference.
Exactly. So unless Forge have a howler of a season finale, I don't think Cavalry are catching up. I think their sights probably are now to beat out Atlético Ottawa. That way they can have that kind of, semifinal, first round revenge. And exactly, and try to go and host the CPL final, something that they were favorites to do last year, but Forge spoiled their party once again, and then obviously spoiled the party again in the final. So I think, revenge is on the mind for Cavalry now. But for York, like you mentioned, they try to find different ways to attack and break down the Cavalry side. And, in the first half, it was around even, I think, in possession. Second half, like I mentioned, the last 15, 20 minutes, Cavalry basically sat back and said, go for it. Go as much as you want, and we'll stay strong. And they did. There's only a handful of chances that I can think of. I know Brian Wright was kind of found in the middle of the box of a cross and kind of looped the header. Juan Cordova had a shot from distance that kind of looked close, but for the most part, just one shot on target compared to, I think Cavalry had 6 or 7 shots on target.
And Cavalry are the team that make a lot of chances usually.
They know exactly. They're a team that when they win, it's by a single goal margin or maybe 2. So for York, I think they'll be disappointed with that one, especially considering that now they drop back down to 4th, and the last thing that they want to do is kind of play that extra game, have to play against whether it be Pacific, Vancouver, Halifax, or Valour, play that extra game in the playoffs and have to go the full length of the playoffs to try to go to the final. So probably disappointing for Benjamin Mora, who has seen his side kind of after this amazing start kind of just go up and down with results lately, especially, I think that's their 3rd loss in the last 7 games. And then they have a couple of ties and only 1 win, which was the away win against Vancouver FC since August 11th. So it's not the greatest of form from York United, but they still are showing that they are a decent team. They're just struggling to kind of piece things together, and especially against stubborn defenses like Cavalry, to unlock those really tough defensive lines.
Yeah, there's a few like decisions when to shoot, when to pass weren't spot on. Like it's little things like that like at this point cost them, just because everything did flow so well, like you said, like at the beginning part of the Vancouver era. It's where they are is fantastic for the club. I think like being in fourth place now, having the 8 points clear of fifth, like they've got a top half position finish, like that they'll be there. I think they would have been, like, the ownership would have probably bitten your hand off for that, like to come into the first year and go, okay, well, we'll just settle ourselves as a good CPL team and we'll look to go on for next year and push forward. Like, I think realistically, they'd be really happy at this when they got there. The fact that things went so well at first, like, lets you dream a bit more. But at the same time, like, it's a team that's building. It's a team that's under new management. That's got lots of work to do. And to be in that position, at this position, at this point in the season, as much as some of these results will be hard to take, I guess, they've got to be pretty happy with how things are going and just need to try and find that something a little bit different for these last few games of the season. Try and get a couple of games where you're doing something maybe a little bit different to start making teams worry a little bit going into the playoffs.
Yeah, but unfortunately for York United, it doesn't get any easier. Probably the toughest place to go to out of all of CPL teams. They have to go to Tim Hortons Field for the final 9:05 derby of the season next Saturday. And with the form that Forge is in, especially, we'll talk about it, but the bounce back win that they had against Vancouver, they're going to be looking to just get this title, this shield locked down. And I think York United are going to have a real tough time to be able to break them down. But there is no, I guess, greater motivation for them than to go and spoil the party for Forge FC and them being rivals, them being title favorites. I'm sure they want to do a favor for Ottawa and Cavalry to kind of give them a little bit more hope of maybe clinching that shield. But yeah, it's going to be a tough test for York United. But I think they got something in them. I think we might see the possibilities of an upset, but it might be that big of a chance.
Yeah, it'll be tough.
Yeah. But let's move on to the second match of the weekend, which was honestly, arguably, probably the most exciting of them all four of the matches, and it was the one that ended off in one of the two that ended off in a draw, and that was Valour against Halifax Wanderers. They drew 1-1 on the night, and the goals all came in the last, I think it was 15 minutes.
Yes,
so the majority of the majority of the match was without any goals, but it saw the most action. Obviously, Valour, Mike, I will let you take the floor there, especially considering that Valour were leading for a good little while towards the end of the match before they let it go at the very end of the match, and yet again struggled to close out a game.
Yeah, I mean, it's not shown on the highlights, so anyone who didn't get the chance to watch this game, because it was, like you say, really exciting. It was back and forth throughout. I mean, Halifax,
felt like a tennis match.
Yeah, Halifax tested the goalie more. Obviously, Scozy had one of his better games. Valour created a lot of chances, didn't hit the target quite as much. So it was really fun, back and forth, like for a neutral. It was a really entertaining game. And then obviously Valour take the lead, and Dante Campbell leaves the ball to go out for a goal kick to find out it's a corner, and you just sense, like, with this Valour side, it's like, well, okay, well, there's a kick in the teeth, and they're going to score now, and they do straight away. And the cross comes in, goal. Like Fernandez levels it up, and we credited Valour previously in the Cavalry game, going 2-0 down and fighting back to 2-2. This went back to old school Valour of they forgot how to play football for the last 3 minutes, and Halifax dominated this. And Valour went on from being relatively comfortable, but okay, we're in a game, we've got a lead, let's try and hold it, to, oh my God, please don't let us lose this match. Like just with one silly decision that's happened, and it's just one of those things with this team. Like it was so, I can't imagine what it must have been like for those fans watching that, and I can't imagine what it'd be like for Dante Campbell, because I think he was marking Fernandez as well. After letting it go, he was marking Fernandez, who scored the goal.
Brutal, yeah. And it's tough because, again, like it's been for the last few weeks, Valour played well in the match. They went toe-to-toe with Halifax. They had a lot of great chances. Sean Hundle, thank God he got his goal in the end, because it looked like he couldn't buy one. There was a one that he missed that turned out to be offside. There was the one that he hit the post. And he's been really looking much more dangerous for Valour in the last few games. Finally, we're starting to see more of the Sean Hundal that we expected to see from the very beginning for Valour. You know, they kind of been just relying on Swibble and his goals.
Yeah, who's gone a bit quiet on the other side.
Exactly. So now it feels like Hundal is picking up the slack a little bit. And yeah, Viscosi was having the game of his life. He made 7 saves in that match. He was really, really on top of his game. Obviously, Viscosi being Viscosi, always has a little bit of a shifty moment in him. That's just what you're gonna expect of him. But it felt like Valour, you know, as soon as that goal went in, I thought that Valour were gonna see that game out. I thought they finally got over that hump because they were focused, they were relentless. Yes, both teams are really going for it, so there was open spaces and there was, you know, plenty of opportunities for counterattacks. But I thought that after that goal went in, Valour would shut up shop, they would sit deep, they would defend, and they would be really focused and see the game out. But yet again, they allowed the other team too much space and time to come and attack. I feel like the issue with Valour is that they give their opponents too much respect the minute that they start winning. And the minute that it's the clock starts ticking down and they know that the win is in sight, then I feel like they start to get into their own heads. They get a little panicky. They get disorganized. There's that sequence before the goal where, like, the ball just kept bouncing in their box. They couldn't clear it, and it almost fell to a Halifax player. And I was screaming at the TV, like, please get it out. Just get it out. Just get it out.
You're bringing on anxiety to everyone watching this.
Exactly. It's infectious and not in a good way. So when that goal went in, it kind of felt inevitable, which was disappointing because Valour, I feel like all in all, I mean, I guess a draw is fair, but I thought Valour had it in them to kind of steal all 3 points and take it, because I was looking at it. That's 3 games in a row that Valour have led early-ish on, and then allowed the team to get back in it and then tie it up. That's 4 draws in a row, and 3 of them were from winning positions. Had they won those 3 games, they'd be well ahead. Well ahead of Pacific right now into 5th place, and they would be the favorites. So it's just these little things that I feel like are lacking from Valour, especially towards the ends of the matches, which is that game management, it's that cleverness, it's that, you know, mental fortitude from not just individuals. CanPL always feel hard done by because of what he did, but it's not just him, right? He's actually been a really big, you know, leader for Valour as somebody that is sort of grounding and everything, but even he looked panicky. It's just the team. The team needs to be mentally stronger in matches, especially towards the end of a match, because they start really well. They honestly, in terms of the first 15, 20 minutes, they're the kings of the CPL. If a game was only 20 minutes, they would win it all. But it's 90 minutes, and it's the last 20 to 30 where they seem to struggle more. And I'm sure it's frustrating for you as a neutral as well. It's frustrating to watch because they've come so far from the beginning of the season, and they're just so close, but still so far from rising above the rest and kind of cementing themselves as that kind of 5th place team.
Yeah, definitely. We've come a long way since the beginning of the year. We just think, oh God, this is going to be another train wreck. And they've made some changes, and you can see some of these players are so much happier with their new sort of teammates. And Kwemi that come in. These players seem to have got quite a good bond with the players who are already there, and that there seems to be a good bit of camaraderie, but. It's like you say, there just isn't the confidence when they're leading to hold on to it as the game goes on.
Yeah, and it's something that obviously Valour will be knowledgeable of. It's not like we're here breaking new ground with this observation, but it's definitely a result where both sides will be disappointed. That was a game, especially for Halifax, who had the midweek game against Pacific and just lost all 3 points in that one. They'll be even more disappointed that they were not able to get 3 points from this one, despite starting the game, or starting the second half kind of not at the races and then going down in the 77th minute, I think it was. Good for them to be able to equalize, but I'm sure the Patrice guys would have wanted more from his side, given the context of the table and that final 5th playoff spot. And Valour the same, as we just mentioned. Just especially since leading, it'll be a point each that will, I think, for both teams, will feel like 2 points dropped.
Yeah, both needed the point, and they'll both be happy with the point. But the way they played on the day, both. Well, yeah, I agree. Both will feel like that's 2 points we should have got. Two more points we should have.
Yeah, and again, I've talking more about Halifax. I thought that what they were able to do in this match was really good, and I thought that the way that they played through the majority of this match showed the hunger and the intensity that we have been wanting to see from Halifax for a while, and that they have been able to show in the last few games. Again, they had to play without Nimick because Nimick got a red card yet again. Second yellow in the game in the midweek, which is like, buddy, you should have learned your lesson before. But he didn't. So once again, Halifax had to deal without an important player, but they did well. I was impressed with what they were able to do. Like I said, it was a very close match. I think a draw is fair on the run of play from both sides, but I'm sure both sides will be disappointed overall. And Halifax especially, I think, aside from the fact that they equalized late on, they will be happy, I guess, in the sense that they didn't lose. But the momentum that they're going into, the momentum that they had and they wanted to have going into these 2 games, that huge 3-0 win against Forge after that 3-0 loss to Pacific, they wanted to take that energy into the last 5-6 matches, and just haven't been able to get it across the line in the last 2 matches. But it is all still there to play for. You look at the table, Pacific are in the 5th place with 28 points, and Halifax are only 3 points behind them, and Valour are only 1 point behind Halifax, and therefore 4 points behind Pacific. And with how everything looks, especially you look at Pacific, and we'll talk about it when we talk about them, but they have a really tough end to the season. Everything is still to play for Valour and for Halifax. Now that everyone finally is on equal playing ground, everyone's on 24 matches, it's really just about who wants it more in the last 4 games of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at those 2 sides are both chasing. My heart says Valour, but my head's saying Halifax. If there's going to be one that catches, like you say, absolutely destroyed Forge. Played most of the game with 10 men against Pacific, and will be desperately ruined by the fact that they didn't win it. Even with 10 men for the majority of the game,
because they played so valiantly in that game. They played their heart outs in that one.
And this one was just this one was a bit of an even battle. But I mean, 5 points in 3 games. Should have probably had 7.
Yeah.
They could have had 9 the way it was late, so it'll be frustrating for them, but there's the signs that if things aren't going right with player availability and things like that, we're still putting in the work that can get us results.
Yeah, exactly. And I do enjoy that for Halifax. They really are now adopting that kind of never say die mentality. And I mean, they suffered from it in the game against Pacific, but in this one, they kept going. And I think it was Andrew Robertson sort of talked about it after the match, that he said to his team, like, we're going to get the equalizer. We're going to get this equalizer. We have to get this equalizer. And they did. And it's that kind of heart and passion that you need to see from a team to be able to, kind of turn the tables after such a tough start to the season, and with the title race so close. They have, again, some really tough games. They're away from home against Ottawa. They're away from home against Cavalry. The last decision day game, they face York Utd at home. They face Vancouver FC at home. Those are the last 4 matches. It's going to be tough for them, but if they can show that change of heart that we've seen in the last few matches, I genuinely think that Halifax could be a dark horse for that 5th position.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But now let's move on to the most, I guess, not exciting, because I do think that last one was most exciting, but at least this one, we saw the most goals in this one, which was Vancouver FC against Forge FC. 4 goals scored, 3 of them from Forge, 1 late one from Vancouver FC. And Forge will be so happy because they get a road win. Their one Achilles heel this entire season has been getting 3 points on the road, and they finally get one. And surprise, surprise, it's against Vancouver FC.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about them, and Ashton Godfrey's decision over team selection and things like that. I just think it was a really rash move to play 4 cones in the defense. It was Portugal getting around that. They're getting around that quite easy. It was unbelievable sometimes. You've got quite experienced players there who are not playing. They are just way 2-3 steps behind what the attackers are doing against them. And that players don't just fall off a cliff. Quality and technique and vision, it doesn't fall off a cliff like that unless there's something wrong at a club.
Yeah. I watched this one. I unfortunately wasn't able to go and be there for Langley. I think this is the first home game that I'm missing for them whilst being in BC. Obviously, we had a little break when I was in Ontario because I was on WFC 2 duty. And I still watched it, though. I had it on my little iPad while I was watching the other game. I was doing double duty. But that one was tough to watch. From a Vancouver FC point of view, it was one where I felt like Vancouver FC started decently. They didn't concede inside 10 minutes. That's a positive. That's good for them after the
small steps.
Yeah, small steps, baby steps, I guess, even though we're in the tail end of the season. But I thought that they started pretty well and were kind of, on level terms with Forge in the first 15, 20, maybe 25 minutes. And I thought, okay, this is a new Vancouver FC. All right, I like this. Yes. Because I was in the pre-match press conference with Ashton Gopp, and he talked about how, after the previous loss against Pacific, he mentioned that he needed to maybe look at new players, at new personnel, and that was sort of aimed towards his players to kind of essentially give them a swift kick up the ass and be like, you need to perform for me now. And he said that in training, it brought a high level of intensity, a high level of competition, an electric atmosphere. So he was really hyping up the squad and the team and saying this is one of the best weeks in training we've seen in a long time. So after hearing that and discussing that with him and seeing the first 20, 25 minutes of the match, I'm like, this could be a massive match for Vancouver FC. And then around the 25th, 30th minute mark, they just switched off. It just it was so quick how everything just started to go downhill. And that first goal from David Choinière, what a game he had, and what a season he's having. David Choinière, him and Tristan Borges are just having, champagne years, honestly. But that goal, if you actually look at it back, the defending from that goal, it was an easy just 1-2 reverse. And Ba and Eamon Salouf literally just watched David Choinière take the ball into the box and just leather it into the back of the net. And it was just, I looked at that and I was just stunned. I was like, what happened to this team, to this defense? To be fair, we saw Matteo Campagna come back in, drop Rocco Romeo. That was a big call from Afshin Gopi because Campagna did well towards the end of the Salish derby. But it's still not enough, clearly, because it's the other players that kind of were let down. I mean, Eamon Salouf, he's had his defensive issues for a while. Fantastic player on the ball, fantastic player going forward. One of my favorite players to watch in the league. But we know defensively he's not it. But I was disappointed from Miloš Ba that I just let that ball go. And just after that first goal went in, it was the same issue as usual, with just the mentality started to drop from Vancouver, and then Forge locked in. And it was after that first goal went in, there was only one-way traffic from there. It was incredible how obviously goals change games. That's the saying is it goes like that for a reason. But in that one, it felt very cut and dry. Just like, okay, essentially you could have ended the game there, it would have been the same result. It just Forge is like basically from minute 30 to minute 82, it was all Forge. All Forge all the time. And again, all credit to Forge. I mean, I feel like we've given them enough credit this season. Everyone knows what Forge are about. Everyone knows how they like to play. They're just good. They're just so good when they're on it. But for Vancouver FC, it's as someone that covers them and watches them and week in and week out and everything, it's such a drag. It's so frustrating because the talent that they have, and I feel like I'm a broken record, especially on this podcast. Every time that we come to Vancouver FC, I feel like I'm in a therapy session, and I'm just venting to you and to the listeners about my problems for free. I'm not even getting charged. But it's frustrating for them, especially because Alejandro Diaz had a brilliant chance in the first 12 minutes. A free header, and the DS of old, or even the DS of earlier this season, would have put that away. But just it wasn't meant to be, and that could have changed the game for them, but it didn't. And then Forge got that first goal, and then the rest was history. What about from you, from your perspective, from someone that maybe is not as dejected as I am?
I mean, for me, like when you say you have to sit through it, all I can imagine is poor Uncle Callum Murphy who has to sit through this. The amount of work that guy puts in, and it was like, the club's first ever signing, the busiest man in the CPL. It was just non-stop. The poor guy is just sat there just bailing his team out and stopping it becoming cricket scores week in, week out at the moment. And you mentioned Eamon Salouf there, and you've got on the other side Benny Badivanga, two players who can really excite when they get the opportunity to find a bit of space. Salouf gets none. Badivanga's offered so much space, and it's just one of those games where you can just watch him just jinking backwards and forwards and just having fun. And he's up against Paris G, who I don't think I'd ever thought I'd ever say he's had a terrible game, because he always does decent or really well. But for some reason, you couldn't even count on Paris G to at least make it difficult for Badivanga. That's when you see players like that having such bad games. Just no wonder people will watch from all around the league outside of BC and watch and go, well, there's no fans in Vancouver, and if we're going to play like that, don't deserve any.
No, it's like you mentioned, Perishia on the second goal, and Noah Jensen just tearing through the midfield like they were made of paper. It was tough to watch, and I refreshed my memory by looking at the highlights, and it was just as tough rewatching it as well. because you see the potential that Vancouver FC have. You see the players that they have, and it's just frustrating to see them not flourish. And I'm sure even like outside of Pacific, even just neutral fans are seeing that and probably being frustrated as well, because they were touted as a dark horse for the league in general at the beginning of the season with the signings that they had, the BC signings, the feel-good signings, the experience, the CPL players, the seasoned CPL players that they had. And it's just gone so downhill, 4 straight defeats for them. And, I put a poll through the Coast to Coast Twitter account to say, if Vancouver FC don't make the playoffs, is that it for Gottby? I would have to imagine personally, and again, nothing against Ashton Gottby. I have a lot of time for him as a person, as an individual, but I do feel like I can't see him still in charge of Vancouver FC for the 2026 season if they don't make the playoffs.
No, and it just doesn't look like the right fit with the club. The guy's got plenty of experience and he's had plenty of success where he's been around a really sort of decorated and diverse coaching career that he's had. It just doesn't seem like the right club, the right fit for him. The way it's running out, and I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, you can't go through around 80% of the season where every time I watch this team, and when the final whistle goes, I want to get on a flight and just go over and give Callum Irvin a hug and say it'll be okay, mate. It'll be okay. You did so well.
You did your best, buddy. You did your best. No, it's tough. It's tough for him, and it's tough for everybody. I think at the club right now, and for all the fans, it's just a tough time. And it does. And like you look at the schedule that they have for the next matches, for the next 4 matches, only 1 at home, which I think they'll probably be thankful for, since their home record is quite bad. They have a much better away record than a home record. But they still have to go to Cavalry, which they have never won at. They have to go to Halifax, which is a very, very tough place to go to. Yeah. They host Valour, which could be a crucial match for them, depending on how the points are there. But then on decision day, they have to go to Ottawa as well. So it's 3 really, really tough environments to go to for Vancouver FC. And it just doesn't look like they have the mettle right now to compete with honestly any of those teams. Even Valour. It's just their slump is so deep that it's tough to see them getting out of it. But this is the CPL. This is, one of the few leagues in the world where like anything can happen. Anyone can be anyone. It's just about what happens on the day.
Yeah.
And that might be just the optimist in me looking at it. So I don't want to count them fully out yet, but it is looking very, very, very tough for them in the next few matches. But a team that is doing really well, let's finish off with Forge FC before we move on to the 4th game, is Forge FC. Again, I would say a comfortable victory for them. Honestly, it didn't feel like they got out of 2nd, maybe 3rd gear in that match. And as opposed to Vancouver FC and a lot of other teams in the league, they actually have a relatively favorable last 4 matches. They obviously host York Utd, which could be tough, but you would assume they're favorites there. They go away from home to Valour, where weirdly, historically, they haven't been that great actually. Away from home against Valour, but still, I would think that you'd probably back them to win there.
Not at all. That's a loss.
I think that's your biasness talking there, Mike. But yeah, it feels like you would back them there. And then they host Atletico Ottawa, again, another crucial, huge match for them, and potential who seals, like the shield might be sealed there. It might be decided in that match, even before decision day, in that game against Atletico Ottawa in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time. And then they close out against Pacific FC and Victoria, which is a tough ground. But again, I would feel like given other places that you could go, like, what they already suffered at Wanderers grounds, going to Atco Field, this one is a pretty favorable end to the season.
Yeah, definitely. And it all depends on where Pacific are at that point, going for that playoff spot as well. But yeah, like they've been in some ways lucky, like we've mentioned, like their away form hasn't been great, and I think this has been kind of like a Forge just getting there, like regular season, we'll sort ourselves out. But plenty of other teams have had too many issues that they just find themselves at the top of the league, and they've got that points gap now, and it's just like, oh we'll just carry on to that. But I think that game against Ottawa, like coming up for them, it's a reminder. I think they'll go out there and like it's a reminder, like playoffs are coming and we're going to beat you. Like so, but that'll also probably get them the shield at the same time, like you say. It's all looking good for Forge.
Hooray! And everybody cheered. And everybody cheered. But yeah, no, it feels like it's only a matter of time for Forge to seal the shield, and maybe they are destined for the double, which is, it's something that every team has been looking forward to do ever since there was a double to do. But it looks like obviously Forge are the favorites to finally get that over the line.
Like we joke around, but they've lost Tristan Henry and they've lost Manchester James. There's some big names throughout.
Rubens Pacius.
Like brought in some young players. They've made a few changes. Kwasi Poku's done great, and now he's gone. And they've had to.
And he's doing well in Belgium too.
Yeah,
I don't know if you get up to him. He scored a double on the weekend for Molenbeek.
I mean, fantastic to see, isn't it? So like, we've got to give them a bit of credit. Like in all seriousness, like they've gone out and they've brought in some young players who are getting more minutes now, and they've not made sweeping signings. So like you got, as much as we want to joke and get frustrated by them, you got to give them credit again.
Yeah, no, they're just an excellently run club. Yeah. They just are. You can't. A lot of people will hate it, but it's the reality. It's the truth. And it's don't be surprised if they lift both pieces of silverware.
Yeah,
come the end of the season and the end of the playoffs. But let's talk about the team that is chasing them right now for the fourth and final game, which is Ottawa, as they drew Pacific FC 1-1 at home in the game that, once again, I feel like we could honestly rehash some of the clips from previous podcasts. Ottawa dominated. They only scored once, and then they dropped points because of it. So many times this season, Ottawa haven't been able to build on their strong performances, score a bunch of goals, be that attacking powerhouse that we know they can be, that we're expecting them to be. And they allow the other team to have a glimmer of hope. And for Pacific FC, obviously it's the man of the hour for them. It's the hero of the season.
Yeah.
Honestly, just came in, and for me, he's looking like he might win, player of the season for Pacific already in Moses Dyer. But starting with Ottawa, it's frustrating in a different way from what the frustration was with Vancouver FC. But it's still frustrating because they started so well from this match. Similarly to how Cavalry played against York Utd, Ottawa were off to the races, and within a few minutes should have been 1-0 up, with Valour Tabla being sent in basically through one-on-one and smashing it against the goalpost.
I've just quickly checked. He has 2 goals this season.
That's criminal from him.
The amount of shots, even if you watch just the highlights of every Ottawa game, he must have had, like, even in just the highlight packages for this game, he must have had about 60 or 70 shots this season. Like, it's just constant. And he either hits the bar or blasts it high and wide. It's just not been this year in front of goal.
No. And I'm actually looking at some of the stats. From his shots on target percentage is 25%.
Yeah.
Which goes to show Yeah, as a fantastic of a player that he is, like he
Yeah.
is truly
Oh yeah. Let's
a
not let's
world
not
beater on the
pretend
ball.
that a lot of the other players. There's quite a few other players in that sort of attacking midfield positions that have got probably quite a similar shots on target percentage.
Yeah, yeah. But for the opportunities that he does have, I mean, there
Mm.
was a chance as well. I forget if it was in the first half or the second half. I think it was in the first half still, where Ruben Del Campo squared it to him, and he had the goal at his mercy,
Mm.
and he just scuffed the shots. And at that point, it's like, how are they gonna like? They're having these brilliant opportunities, but they can't get the ball into the back of the net.
No.
And it's just, how are you missing these? How are you missing these great chances to be able to really just like cement yourself in the game? And if you get 2-3 goals up against Pacific, it doesn't matter how well Moses Dyer is playing. Pacific
Mm.
are still going to go and score 3-4 goals. They're still not there yet
No.
as
Yeah.
a team. Oh, put the Sailor C Derby aside. They're still
Yeah, it's
not
a couple
there.
of games where things just randomly clicked. Yeah, it doesn't take away the 20 other matches.
Exactly. But but Pacific are still good enough to get a goal. And you don't want to invite that kind of pressure. You don't want to
No.
allow them that hope to get back into it. But that's exactly what Ottawa did. And then Pacific FC, in the second half, they kind of changed things around a bit. They kind of switched formation. Armando Sa, who was the acting head coach because James Merriman was suspended and has been
Mm.
for the last 2 matches, he kind of switched things up. He brought on Reed and he brought on Yates
Yeah.
for Kashavars and for Tikarveanu, and they kind of switched to like a 4-3-3, and that really opened things up because instead of having Dario Zanata as a striker alongside Moses Dyer, it kind of brought Zanata to the wing, which I think is his more dangerous position,
Yeah, he seems
and
more
that's
comfortable.
where he was able to actually get at Atletico Ottawa, especially since Atletico Ottawa's wingbacks like to go and attack. He found a lot more space in behind there to be able to go and be a nuisance and create opportunities. And yeah, it was literally his cross that allowed Dyer to
Mm.
score the equalizer. So it was a great move from Pacific, and I know that they will be happy that they were able to get that goal. 4 straight goals for
Yeah.
Moses Dyer as well. I like what you put. Match made in heaven.
Yeah.
That is exactly what this is.
Yeah.
Again, I think we knew going into the trade deal that this was going to be something that I think both teams needed.
Mm.
But goodness gracious, I did not know that Pacific needed Moses Dyer this much.
Yeah.
But apparently they do. And he's loving life right now.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't get that many great opportunities as a striker, which Easton Ngaro, Rion Moore, Gennaro Daniels have all found out. But Moses Dyer's just got that bit about him that's just like, well, I might not get the perfect opportunity, but I'm going to make sure I get at least 2 or 3 opportunities. And he puts in the effort and he puts in the work, and he really does a lot of the dirty work that these other strikers just haven't really done. They're looking for the opportunities. Pacific always have wanted to have possession. Moses Dyer can come in and go, well, if we haven't got that much possession, if the ball only comes into the final third once every 20 minutes, I'm going to make sure I'm going to get something out of this, which it's just what they've needed. It's just absolute breath of fresh air for them. It really gives them that. It just opens up things for other players as well, knowing that, well, the defenders are going to be panicked by Moses Dyer. He doesn't give up. And it's it's just working perfectly for them at the moment.
Yeah, and afterwards, after the match happened, he had a couple of words. He maybe had a little slight dig at Vancouver FC. Obviously, it's rumored that he didn't end off with the team on the best of terms, with the coach on the best of terms, and he made a little comment just saying, I just get more chances here. I think Pacific, we play better football. We create more for attacking players here. I've been enjoying it so much more, feeling so much more comfortable here, as well as in my play and in my finishing. So I think that wasn't him just being like, oh, we're playing well. I think that was, had a little veil of this is now where I'm actually playing well, and Vancouver FC just look at the table kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's where Moses Dyer is at right now, which you like a little bit of that kind of like, he was being a little naughty with that. I don't mind that from a
No.
player. It gives a little bit more oomph to the league to
Mm.
see kind of those extracurriculars going on. And you can't say he's wrong either, too. Like,
No.
he's flying with Pacific. He's the reason why they are now above Vancouver FC. And
No.
what a story it'll be at the end of the season if he's the difference between Pacific being in the playoffs in that 5th position and Vancouver FC once again finishing outside of the playoff positions, given that he was, one of their star strikers, Vancouver FC, at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna be a big story about Moses Dyer. I think like this trade's huge, like you say. It's just worked out so well on one side compared to the other. I mean, Iman Salouf's had his flashes, but I think it's still
he hasn't had the impact like
exactly. But it's that thing where it's like, well, okay, that the first part of his career of Pacific, it was exciting, and then it became flashes every so often, and that's sadly carried on in his short start to his Vancouver career. He's had those little bits where you go, this is the player I like watching, but I've got to wait another 2.5 games till it comes back again.
Yeah, very inconsistent. He reminds me a little bit of like how Ali Musi was with Cavalry at the beginning of his career, where Ali Musi would only kind of show up every 3-4 games. He was kind of the like luxury player for them. And then he started to find a lot more consistency. I kind of see that with Salouf. I'm just hoping that the same thing sort of happens where we start to see him have more of a consistent impact on the team and isn't just, a one wonder performance for every 4 or 5 matches for Vancouver FC. Because they need a better return on that deal. Because right now Pacific have stolen that deal. I just really love that Moses Dyer adds exactly what Pacific has been needing in a striker, which is like that hunger, that relentlessness to finding that space, the hounding the defenders. He's so clever as well in his movement. He's he's a really, really good striker. Genuinely a very, very underrated striker, and I'm very glad that he's getting the plaudits and the flowers that he deserves. Because seeing him up close and watching him when he was here at Willoughby and just being able to see what he does in these specific games as well, he's such a good center forward.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. It's really, really exciting to see. And like, I mean, we flip it back to the other side, and so like we chat about Ottawa, like Del Campo's obviously, I mean, my brain's gone to pieces, but Del Campo's still like leading goal scorer, but it just feels like forever since he's been that goal threat regularly. Some sort of struggled. Ollie Bassett came on later, like late chance, which is just blazed over. And I look at these two teams now, and they're going into very different. I mean, Pacific are just trying to scrape in. Ottawa are trying to scrape a title, but they're both. When you look at both of these teams, you think, okay, Pacific, there's something going here. Like for the what they're going for, they've made changes and they look like, right, okay, this is how we're going to try and get over the line. But when you look at Ottawa trying to get over the line, I can't see what changes they're trying to make to do anything different. Like you say, it's like we said earlier, it's the same thing each time, and you can't back a manager that much with that many players to still have this.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough there because, like, I understand there's some decisions that Cargo has done in some games that I feel like he deservedly, deserves the criticism that is given towards him. But this was one of those games where I kind of feel like it falls more on the players rather than the coaching, because they did so well in that first half. They steamrolled Pacific in that first half. They had opportunities to make it. They should have been 3-0 at halftime. But
the amount of shots, I'm trying to think, like the amount of shots though that are from outside the box.
Oh, for Ottawa, that's actually a good
Like
point.
that's the big thing that concerns me, which is on the players, but I think it's on the coach too. Like, why do they feel like they have to consistently shoot from outside the box?
Yeah. Yeah, especially since that's, not really like if it was Ollie Bassett, then I would say
Yeah.
then you could see him scoring from outside of the box and with a bit more consistency if he's at his best, but he hasn't been.
No.
But yeah, no, it is true that they do love shooting from distance, which is odd considering that
Yeah.
they're a team that likes to, cut, attack through the wings and then cut inside for the ball into the box.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like this particular performance, if Tablo would have put those two chances away, it would be a very different story. But overall, yeah, I can understand, especially when you look at the fact that the last, out of the last 5 matches, they only have 1 win and 4 draws.
Mm.
And had they turned 2 of those draws into wins, they'd be right on Forge FC's tail, if not maybe, above them. You never know.
Yeah.
It's especially considering that you see it was against Valour away from home and at home against Pacific. These are games that you would want Ottawa, if they really want to flex themselves as one of the best teams in the league, to see out and be able to just kind of grind out 3 points, and they haven't been able to. And I think ultimately, while this result I think might be more on the players, ultimately the season's result will obviously end up on the head of Carlos Gonzalez, and yeah, he'll have some tough questions to answer.
Yeah, I mean, like you just mentioned there, like they haven't lost, like, and they're unbeaten for a while now. But I mean, when you look at it from the outside looking in, I think it's the game they won. The most dangerous, like, goal threat, like, heavy game is Iliadis just going for shots from the corner. Like that's when they're the most dangerous. Like that's when like, oh god, this is repetitive and it's difficult to defend. That's for me. I find Ottawa so crazy that I think they're not losing. They're still competing for a title, but I'm just not sold on them. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, well, for them, looking at their last 4 games of the season, they host Halifax next. They go away from home to both York and Forge, which is two really tough matches. We mentioned that Forge game being potentially a title decider, and then the last game, as we mentioned, with talking Vancouver, they host Vancouver FC. So about, I'd say, if I had to rate it, like maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10 in terms of difficulty, maybe a 7 considering that they have to face Forge. But again, when you at home against Halifax, at home against Vancouver, even away against York, you have to expect them to, if you're a fan, to see those games out if they really are about it, and what they claim to be or what they've shown to be in parts of this season, especially in the first half of the season. So it's going to be tough, but I feel like if they want to be top dogs, like Forge are, like Cavalry it has been, even Pacific a couple of seasons ago, you need to see them get these results and get those wins across the line.
Yeah, definitely. They need to be picking up probably a minimum of 9 points for you to take them seriously going into. It may not be enough, like, to get over the line in the regular season, but to make you think, okay, yeah, this is a team to be this team to be worried about in the playoffs. You've got to pick up these big results now.
Yeah. And then looking at Pacific's last 4 games of the season, they have like I mentioned, I think probably one of the toughest ends in general. They host Cavalry, they host Forge, and they go away from home to York in the final 3. And next week they go away from home to Valour, which again still isn't an easy ground. So it's tough for Pacific. But I think given the fact that they scored a extremely late winner in the equalizer in the midweek against Halifax, and then immediately have to go to Ottawa to face Ottawa in their home ground in the capital after playing earlier last week all the way back in your home ground. They're doing crazy trips around you. They can be pretty content, I think, with the draw, especially given how the first half went for Atletico Ottawa. But with the tough schedule that they have, and given the fact that it's so close at the bottom of the table in the Final Four, I don't know if I would back them to still be in that position come the end of the season. Are you in the same boat, or do you think they can see it through?
Yeah, no, I probably wouldn't put my money on them, but I think as a club, they're going to go into it going, yeah, it's going to be tough, but Moses Dyer has given us a chance to if we can get the opportunities, we're going to be dangerous. And I think it's brought a little bit more out of the midfield as well when they know they've got this focal point will do everything going forward. He will work so hard for them, and they've made those changes. They've brought in young players. They've rotated in game, like you mentioned. I just think there's a little bit more confidence about them. I'm not saying it's enough that will take them over the line, but they are a different team to what we were seeing at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and again, it might be coming too little too late compared to in the same boat as Cavalry, that even though they are in that 5th position, because it's so close and because of the tough end that they have, it'll be tough to see them there. But if they do, it'll be a fantastic turnaround for James Merriman.
They're lucky that the other 3 teams are I mean, you could put money on them having a calamity of a match as well randomly. So you can't back any of them with full confidence.
It feels like it's almost like in the same vein. It's like the 4th place in the Premier League. It's just like whoever is the least bad out of the top sides will get that 4th and final Champions League spot. It's the same thing for here. Whoever's the least bad out of Pacific, Vancouver, Halifax, and Valour will clinch the final playoff spot. But that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow us once again on all of our socials at Coast to Coast FC so that you can give us your thoughts on each of this week's episodes. Let us know who you think will be winning the title at the end of the season and who you think will be clinching the final playoff spot as we get to the thrilling finale of the CPL season. But until next time, I'm Felipe Ojejo.
And I'm Mike Rice.
And this has been Coast to Coast FC, signing out.